Smoke hung thick in the saloon, the kind that clung to clothes long after you left. A woman in a wide-brimmed hat sat at a poker table with her cards steady in gloved hands. Men around her cursed, joked, and tossed their bets into the pot, but none of it rattled her. She kept a cigar between her teeth, a neat stack of chips by her elbow, and a calm that made hard men uneasy. Her name was Alice Ivers, though across the West people called her Poker Alice. She had not started life in a saloon. Alice was born in Devonshire, England, in 1851, and moved with her family to Virginia when she was young. She went to boarding school and learned the manners expected of a lady. After the war, the pull of the frontier carried the Ivers family west to Colorado, where towns rose and fell on ore and rumor. In Leadville, Alice married a mining engineer named Frank Duffield. He liked poker, and most nights he sat under smoky lamps with miners still streaked in dust. Alice stood behind him and watched how the game worked, how men held their breath without knowing it, how hands trembled when a bluff failed, how a steady player waited for the right moment and then pressed. Frank died in a mining accident not long after they wed. Alice found herself a widow in her early 20s with little money and less patience for pity. Some women looked for a second husband or went home or took in sewing. Alice picked up the deck. She dressed well, kept her back straight, and played the percentages. Men underestimated her, and she let them. She learned the odds and read the room. She learned that silence was a weapon. By the time the first snows hit Leadville, she had a name: Poker Alice. She followed the money from camp to camp and then to Deadwood, South Dakota, where the legend of Wild Bill was still fresh and saloons never slept. Rooms rang with piano tunes, chair legs scraped over sawdust, and pistols lay close to hands even when no one expected trouble. Alice took her chair as if she had always belonged there. She was not loud. She did not brag. She stacked chips, puffed her cigar, and waited for the pots that mattered. Over months and years she claimed big wins in towns strung along rail lines and stage routes. Later she said she had taken more than $250,000 off the tables in her time. Men who lost to her remembered less the number than the feeling of being sized up by a woman who never blinked. She married again, to a painter named Warren G. Tubbs, whom she met through the gambling rooms. They tried the quiet life on a South Dakota ranch and raised 7 children. Alice worked, kept accounts, and tried to treat poker as a tool instead of a hunger. But winters on the plains were long and hard, and Warren's health failed. During one storm, with snow piled high against the door, he struggled for breath and could not catch it. He died that winter. Alice buried him herself, breaking frozen ground with a shovel because the men she could hire could not reach her through the drifts. When the thaw came, she went back to the cards, because the cards paid. Her third marriage came later, to a ranch hand named George Huckert. Alice said she married him because he kept asking and because she did not like to cook for one. He died not many years later. By then, she had outlived 2 husbands and lived enough stories for 3 women. She still carried herself like a lady, but she did not ask permission for the life she chose. In time, she opened a small resort near Sturgis, a saloon with rooms upstairs and a few working girls, the kind of place soldiers and cowboys visited on payday. People called it Poker Alice's. She liked order. She banned knives on the floor and kept a revolver near the cash box. One night, a group of soldiers drank too much and tried to push past her rules. The argument turned, and Alice drew her gun. When the smoke cleared, a soldier lay dead. She was arrested and charged with murder. In court, she said she had fired in self-defense, and witnesses supported her. The jury agreed, and she walked out of the courthouse free. Law never stayed far. She was arrested more than once for running a brothel and for selling liquor without a license. Sometimes she paid fines. Sometimes she spent a short time in jail. Sometimes she convinced a judge that the law had larger problems than an old woman trying to keep her place open. She could scold an official in a firm, even manner that sounded more like Sunday school than a threat. People remembered the hat and gloves and the way she turned a courtroom into another table where she looked for an edge. Through all of it, the husbands, the cold winters, the courtroom days, she kept playing. She treated poker like work. Sit straight, protect your bankroll, leave when the odds go thin. She studied faces and hands, watched for a thumb that tapped twice, a knee that shook, an eye that drifted. She stayed for long sessions and never broke on the Sabbath. If a big game pushed past midnight on Saturday, she shut it down and came back after church. Men joked about it, then learned to plan around it. Deadwood aged, and so did Alice. Trains brought more people and fewer stories fit for dime novels. The West traded raw edges for courthouse seals. Alice kept a foot in both worlds. She could take tea in a parlor and then cross the street and win a hand that made a miner swear off cards forever. Even in her 70s, she carried a small pistol and a sharper memory than most men brought to the table. Younger gamblers stared at her as if she had stepped out of a legend and into their seat. People told tales about her that grew with time, but the bones stayed the same. She was a widow who chose cards over dependence. She was a lady who would not be pushed. She ran a house on her own terms in a part of the country where men swore they ran everything. She broke the law now and then and took her lumps when she had to. She survived by reading rooms, counting odds, and staying colder than the men who thought they could outbluff her. Reporters loved her. Year by year they sent small stories back east. The famous woman gambler who beat cowboys in Deadwood, the brothel keeper who shot a soldier and walked free, the church-going card shark who would not play on Sundays. Some pieces were fair, some were dressed up. Alice did not lose sleep over that. She knew that reputation kept doors open and games full. She also knew that most men who read about her had never tried to sit across from her and stay steady for 12 hours. She grew old as the country changed around her. She saw automobiles on streets that had once been mud. She heard the first radios carry music across rooms where pianos had once fought to be heard. But she never forgot the sound of a deck snapping into a neat stack, or the feel of a heavy coin sliding across felt. Those things marked time for her better than calendars ever did. In 1930, at 79, Poker Alice died in South Dakota. She was buried in Sturgis under a simple stone. People in town shook their heads and smiled when they said her name, the way people do when they remember someone who lived exactly as she pleased. She left stories, debts, a few keepsakes, and a legend that did not fold when she did. Her strange ride was not a single chase down a canyon or a moonlit shootout. It was the long gamble she made with her life, choosing cards over convention, risk over safety, and her own rules over anyone else's. From the lamp-lit rooms of Leadville to the wind-scarred streets of Deadwood and the courtrooms of South Dakota, Poker Alice outweighted storms, sheriffs, and men who thought they had her measured. She proved that nerve could be as sharp a tool as any pistol. Thank you for listening to Deserted Trails. Subscribe for more forgotten stories from the old frontier.